Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, I'm Rohit from lifestylemastery.com, and today I'm excited to have Andy Molinsky, who's a professor of organizational behavior and psychology at Brandeis University's International Business School and author of Reach, a new strategy to help you step outside a comfort zone, rise to the challenge, and build confidence. Andy is an expert on a number of topics, including creating and leading high-functioning growth virtual teams, managing a diverse workforce, and generally speaking, helping individuals, teams, and leaders achieve their potential by learning to step outside the comfort zone. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So, you wrote the book Reach. How's the book different from other, self-help books, and what made you write the book?
Well, in terms of what's different about the book Reach is that I think there is a lot of information out there about stepping outside your comfort zone. I think a lot of it's kind of fluffy. I'm a professor of organizational behavior and psychology. So I've got a PhD in organizational behavior and psychology. And so the book is full of research, including my own, about stepping outside your comfort zones. But at the same time, it's a really easy and good read. So it's kind of hits that sweet spot between being evidence-based and also being a super easy read and also a very useful read. So that I guess that would be my pitch for why the book's different. And in terms of how I got into it, that's an interesting story, actually. So my first book was called Global Dexterity, which is about adapting and adjusting your behavior across cultures, acting outside your cultural comfort zone. And I've done a lot of research on that as well as training and consulting and teaching and so on. And I got a lot of feedback from that book saying like, hey, these tools, these insights are really useful, but they're way more applicable to other situations, not just crossing cultures, but anyone stepping outside, their comfort zone, period. And so I kept getting feedback like this from keynote talks and emails and LinkedIn and so on. And so it inspired me to write a second book. And that's what Reach is about.
Got it. And, you talk about comfort zone and, how you should step out of it. But, we should really step outside the comfort zone for the sake of growth. So why don't we do it? And, how did you get interested in this particular topic?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I do a lot of keynote talks about Reach and stepping outside your comfort zone, and I often begin them by sort of giving a confessional in the sense that I wrote this book, but I struggle stepping outside my comfort zone. I always have, whether it's public speaking, which has always been hard for me, but I've really worked hard on it and learned to do it. And I gave a TED Talk last year and so on, and I give speeches all the time. But 20 years ago, it was very uncomfortable for me. Or going to networking events or pitching or promoting myself on social media or in person. So, I have to say that I've always struggled stepping outside my comfort zone, but the struggle hasn't stopped me. I've always kind of pushed along, and I've always been very thoughtful about it, really. And so I figure that maybe I have my finger on the pulse of what's hard, and that allows me to empathize with other people's experiences and hopefully help them as well.
Got it. And, you talked about the 5 psychological roadblocks that one should explore, outside the comfort zone: authenticity, likability, competence, morality, and resentment. So, would you like to talk about these roadblocks? And does it happen for everybody, who doesn't work, who doesn't explore out of the comfort zone, or, it's even with those who take risk every now and then?
Yeah, so for my book Reach, I spoke with all sorts of people: entrepreneurs, executives, managers, but I also expanded it to doctors, police officers, therapists, actors, students, all sorts of people, in all sorts of situations, making small talk with people you don't know, pitching your business, networking, being assertive, public speaking, all sorts of things. So, and as you were saying, and this is true, what I found that people struggled stepping outside their comfort zone for 5 predictable reasons. these roadblocks, psychological roadblocks. And by the way, you don't necessarily experience all these roadblocks every time you consider stepping outside your comfort zone. But even one of them can make it hard, and two even harder. So for example, authenticity, the idea that this isn't me, this doesn't feel like me, whatever it is I need to do. And that can be really hard to feel inauthentic. Or likability, the idea that people, you worry that people won't like this version of you. So if you're more assertive than you normally are, for example, and you decide you want to step outside your comfort zone and being a bit more assertive, what if people don't like that version of you, right? You might worry about that, and that might stop you, or at least might give you cause to hesitate or avoid. Competence. What if these are fears? Remember, what if I'm bad at this, and what if it's obvious that I'm bad at this? Like, what if people can see that I'm bad at this? That's a concern people have. So even if we stopped right there with authenticity and likability and competence, those are. That makes it really hard. That's a tough cocktail, right? Feeling those things. It's what people talk about, the imposter syndrome, the idea that they feel like a wannabe or a poser, or that they don't belong or they shouldn't be there. I think a lot of people feel that. And those are some of the challenges. And then finally, I'll round it out. Some people feel resentful stepping outside their comfort zone. They know they need to, let's say, but they feel resentful that they have to. Like, for example, I don't know, if you work in a traditional business and you notice that people who are able to make small talk with the boss, those are the ones getting the best assignments, and you don't feel so comfortable making small talk, or it's not your go-to style, you might feel resentful. Like, you might say to yourself, I've got great skills. How come I'm not getting those assignments? I have to step outside my comfort zone to do that. You could feel resentful. And then morality. I opened my book Reach actually with a story of a woman who founded her own business, who's an entrepreneur. And soon thereafter, she ended up having to fire her best friend. And that was really hard for her, as it would be for any of us, I think. And she wondered and worried if what she was doing was wrong. That's morality. So again, even just one of these challenges can make it hard, but oftentimes we experience more than one of them.
Got it. When you talk about these roadblocks, I could see that there's some of them which even I feel now and then. So what would it take to successfully get outside your comfort zone and keep taking such risks?
And that's exactly the question that I had too, right? Because it would be a really boring book if I stopped there. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand what distinguished people who were successful from those who were unsuccessful at stepping outside their comfort zones. I found three key factors, three key tools, you could say, strategies even. The first being conviction. Having a deep sense of purpose, of your why. In other words, like, what's in it for you? Why does this matter for you? Will this enable you to help others? Will it make you feel good about yourself? Is it the necessary thing for you to do? Have you always dreamed about owning your business? And if you need to do X, public speaking or whatever it is, maybe that's just a necessary evil and you have to do it. Or whatever it is, and it could be multiple things, find and embrace that source of conviction, because people who are successful at stepping outside their comfort zones in all the professions that I looked at were able to do that. So that's conviction. A second tool is what I call customization, and I'd have to say this is kind of like the most surprising and exciting thing I found in my work. The idea that I think oftentimes when stepping outside our comfort zones, we feel maybe helpless or powerless, right, in a really hard situation. But I found that people who were successful realized they had more power than they think to tweak or customize or personalize their situation. So in other words, it might mean, altering or changing the way you use your body language. It might be words you choose to use, and that makes you feel just a little bit more comfortable if you can script something out. It might mean a prop. something that you wear, that lucky suit or power tie, or for me, in my case, I wore this ring every time I used to speak in public early on, 20 years ago in my career, and that really actually helped me. It gave me courage. Or maybe you go early, you play with timing, you go early to a networking event, and it's less loud, less noisy, less intimidating, whatever it is. And there's so many examples, and I've gotten a lot of emails about all the interesting ways people customize after reading my book Reach. So customizations, that's a great tool in your toolkit. And then the final one is clarity. I think often emotions get the best of us when stepping outside our comfort zone. They cause us to catastrophize, and that all that means is think the worst, and also put a high probability on the worst. In other words, if you're giving a public speech, I'm going to look like a fool. I'm going to faint on stage. I'm going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. And to really think that's going to happen. And what clarity was it was the ability to sort of even out your reaction and say to yourself, I probably won't be the best TED talker in the world if I go up and give a speech and I'm not so comfortable with it. But you know what? I'm probably not going to faint on stage. I won't be the worst person there, or I'll have some positive moments. I'll learn from it. And you know what? I'll bet you next time around it's going to be better. It's sort of somehow finding a way to have a more normalized, reasonable perspective on the challenges you face, and don't let emotion sort of hijack your experience. That's clarity. So we got conviction, customization, and clarity. And those were the tools that I saw successful people using.
Got it. And, when I had to leave my first job, I was a stockbroker. I wanted to leave that industry and do something different. So, when I left my comfort zone and tried to do something different, I tried taking a lot of risk. But, and it turned out well for me. But, what are the realizations, people have after, they leave the comfort zone? Is it about some sort of empowerment, or they're comfortable taking risk? What are the usual realizations people get after leaving comfort zone?
Yeah, what I often found is that the trick is to avoid avoidance, because it's so compelling to avoid, right? Because avoidance brings relief, short-term relief. Oof, I don't have to do that thing, whatever it is, and that's short-term relief. But of course, over the long term, it just makes whatever it is that you're afraid of more challenging the next time around. So what I found for people who were able to nudge themselves outside their comfort zone and to choose approach instead of avoid, in other words, using the strategies we just talked about, they oftentimes had one or two or both realizations about themselves. And these were really key. The first was this actually isn't as hard as I thought it was. And then the second is, I'm actually a little bit better at this than I thought I was. And when you can have that learning, and by the way, that learning will never happen if you avoid, right? That learning never happens if you avoid. But if you approach, if you nudge yourself to take that leap using some of the strategies we're talking about, you can benefit from this learning about yourself. And that I saw often kicked in a positive spiral. Instead of spiraling in avoidance, it spirals in a positive way towards trying it again, building up a little bit more sort of confidence and self-efficacy. And so that was really the trick, to nudge yourself to try it and then benefit from the self-discovery when you did.
Right. And Andy, are there any times when people should stay in the comfort zone?
Yes, I believe so. And I certainly don't want people listening here today to say to themselves, oh my gosh, I got to get outside my comfort zone in every situation. That's just not true. I think you need to pick your spots. I think you need to focus on key high leverage situations that matter for you personally, professionally. Maybe for you it's networking, maybe it's pitching your company, maybe it's, starting to give speeches. Whatever it might be, pick one or two key high leverage situations that are probably in your stretch zone, probably not in your panic zone, probably not something you're absolutely terrified of, but just something that you're scared of, right? And then start there and build from there.
Right. And how would one go about adopting a growth mindset? Is it about learning new languages, or trying to do something new every week or month? What would be your suggestion?
I think a growth mindset is an attitude. It's a perspective. It's a way of sense making about yourself, especially in the face of roadblocks and challenges that you experience. So if you slip up, and you will, right? Anytime we're learning something new and challenging and scary, we're going to slip up. Can you start to think about mistakes as data about how you can improve, instead of thinking of mistakes as as evidence of your innate inability or something like that? Think of mistakes as data. This is data that I can use to improve for next time. That's a learning orientation, and that's a mindset. That's something you actually have to work on developing. But I've seen people start to develop that, and you're not going to go from 0 to 60. You're not going to go from a performance-only mindset to a learning mindset. But again, you can start to nudge yourself in that direction.
Right, and you've done your PhD in user psychology and behavior. How did you get interested in that subject? And if somebody wants to learn more about it, how do they go about it? Are there any specific books which you would recommend?
Well, I came at it actually from life experience. When I early on in my 20s, long time ago, I lived. So I'm in Boston, by the way, in the United States. I'm from the U.S. I lived in Europe twice, and that's where I came to this. I just from my life experience and my work experience there, I just became fascinated by the office dynamics, psychology of relationships and communication, and it inspired me to learn more about it, and ultimately to get a PhD and a master's degree as well in these areas. In terms of books, there are so many books out there now about this topic. Lots of colleagues of mine who are professors have started to write books. I've written 2, Reach and Global Dexterity, and I'd be honored if you'd check those out. But there's so many other books out there about so many different topics. It's hard for me just to kind of hone in on one.
Right, and let's quickly do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
On the topic of books, I was afraid you're going to ask me to pick one. I think my favorite one is probably a book called Difficult Conversations. I love that book. And it's a book about how to have challenging conversations when sort of really important issues to you are at stake. I was looking just now, I'm in my office, I was looking for my copy, and if I were to find it, this is not video, but I could show you how it's so worn. It's like the book, it's the most worn book I have.
Okay. And who's the author of Difficult Conversations?
Doug Stone and Sheila Heen.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes. If you could go back in time when you started writing a book, The Reach, what is the one thing you would have focused on, or would you have done anything differently?
When writing the book, Reach?
Yes.
I loved writing the book, Reach. I have to tell you, I'm trying to think. I really love doing it. I know other authors that I've met who find writing torturous or difficult, or actually the one little dirty secret of a lot of writers is that they don't even write their own books. They get ghostwriters. Yes. I write everything I do myself. And I love doing it. It's one of my very favorite things. So I actually there's nothing that I would do differently. I really enjoyed every moment of the process. Now, the publicity around the book, that's a whole different story, right? Having to oftentimes pitch and promote yourself and so on. That's not so much my cup of tea. I like being in conversations like this where we're actually talking about the content. That's different. I enjoy that. That's why I love doing podcasts.
Got it. And what's your favorite online tool? For example, Gmail or Slack?
Well, I use both of those. I think probably Zoom. I am on Zoom all the time. I love Zoom, so I get no kickback on this. I love Zoom for its simplicity, and it's mostly reliability. I really like it. So that's probably my favorite right now.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite tools as well. It's one of the fastest growing SaaS products. I love it. So can you talk about your book reach, and how can listeners get to read your book?
Yeah, so it's everywhere books are sold, on Amazon and elsewhere. But also, I'd really encourage you to visit my website, which is www.andymolinsky.com. You'll find there all sorts of articles. So I'm a writer for Harvard Business Review and Inc.com and Psychology Today. All sorts of videos and assessment tools, and of course links to my social media, to LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. I have an author Facebook page, so I love to connect with folks. I also have an email list, and I'd love to have you join my email list. I send out email every couple of weeks, and it's usually with just helpful links to things that people who I'm connected with in my community might find interesting. So however it is, please connect and hope to continue the conversation.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming onto the show, Andy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.